did you, is this a particular piece of litigation that you're referring to?
Yeah, but we're not, as usual, going to get into back and forth.
Well, no, but I'm curious as to what it is, because we just had the, is there a particular piece of litigation that referenced? Because I'm...
Yes. I believe that Elaine was discussing the Nancy Genovese lawsuit that's currently pending against the town.
And just so I understand, and I don't know who could best answer this.
No, we do not go into back and forth.
I'll, I guess, ask the town attorney, what was the issue with this litigation that's apparently being spoken of here?
I believe the issue is that there was a motion for default judgment. The court has given the town an opportunity to answer that motion for default judgment. The town has done so, and the court is currently weighing the town's answer, and we await a decision from the court as to whether or not that default judgment shall be vacated.
Why is there a motion for a default judgment? I guess it's...
Procedurally, there was a procedural omission, and an answer was never filed.
Filed by the town?
Correct.
There are some papers that speak to that, that speak to the reason for that. They're public. They have to do with a death in a family, and they are being considered by the court, and we feel, that we have handled this as well as...
Actually, this came up last week, and Councilwoman Grabowski asked the question, and I think your response, Madam Supervisor, was, this is nothing. It's been taken care of. I've consulted with our deputy town attorney, and there's nothing to worry about. And we're finding out that there's a default judgment here?
I never said there is nothing.
The motion for a default judgment.
That's not a preliminary procedural question. Default judgment is to be distinguished from some kind of deposition that's been missed or a scheduling problem. That's quite different from my understanding of our conversation last week.
The paperwork that has been filed with the court is customary paperwork. It was filed based on a...
Customary paperwork and a filing of a default judgment in a federal lawsuit that's not customary.
No, Jim, I think, am I right, Kathleen, this is the first that I've heard of this, but that you said that the judgment was not issued. There's a motion for judgment pending.
Correct.
And the town answered that.
Correct.
So just,
Well,
there's no default judgment at this point.
you and I both know as attorneys that the only way that you can offer up a motion for default judgment, particularly in a federal lawsuit, in a federal courthouse, anywhere, justice court or regular court, county court, is when someone doesn't do something or someone neglects to answer a pleading and someone neglects to offer an answer in a lawsuit. And that's to be distinguished from the misscheduling of a deposition or any other such scheduling problem. That is a dispositive motion that says, if granted, we lose. That's distinguished from a scheduling problem, and that is not my understanding of the conversation, and we were all here on last Friday.
Kathleen was not here.
No, Kathleen was not here, and you did invoke her authority by saying she said it's perfectly fine, it's taken care of, and I'm concerned about that.
It wasn't clear to me at that time.
Those were also not my words, so...
Yeah, am I mistaken, Chris? Nancy, Bridget,
Those were not my words, Jim.
You said it's been taken care of. There's nothing to worry about.
It has been taken care
No,
of.
that's not taken care of. You got a federal judge that needs to now decide whether or not we're going to have the right to defend a $70 million lawsuit. That's not taken care of. We are now sitting at the discretion of the judge.
If a default judgment is granted in a hypothetical situation, what's the amount?
Whatever they stake in the complaint.
Which is?
$70 million.
$70 million. Who is responsible to file the response or file on behalf of the town?
The attorney assigned to the litigation.
And who was that?
The town attorney.
Why in this case didn't we farm this, sub this out to a specialist, like we usually do in these major cases?
Why was the town board not updated on the status of this? When did this happen?
It happened.
As an attorney, I can say this. One of the most egregious actions or inactions that any attorney can take is not responding to a pleading. This is not a procedural question. This is not something that gets swept away as, oh, this is nothing to be concerned about. This is significant. We lose right here, right now, unless the judge says, you know what, interpose your defense. That is quite different from somebody missed an appointment.
There is no doubt about that, but you as an attorney know well that the court will take certain matters into consideration in considering this. In this case, there was a death in the family. It was a mother who died, and all of that has been submitted to the court. It is my understanding, and as
There's
you...
no question, but the personal...
And so the question that was asked of me is, had we responded? And by then, we had responded, and we had responded appropriately.
In October. In October. And how 2 or 3 months could then go by, and then we get hit with a default judgment, and we have to defend it. It's one thing to have personal circumstances to pull you away from your responsibilities, and everyone is sensitive to loss.
Even the court probably understands that.
I'm sure.
Yes.
But if you can't continue on and you're pulled away, you hand it off to your deputies and you hand it off to your department, irrespective as to whether any of that is done. You can't let 3 months go by when $70 million is in the balance. That's the entire budget for the town of Southampton, almost.
Okay. But you also know that it is a frivolous lawsuit.
That's the standard.
And it was...
Absolutely irrelevant, and you know...
It is not, but it has been handled.
That is absolutely irrelevant.
It
If
has-
there's a $70 million default judgment that a judge could decree, you know, is the responsibility of the taxpayers of the town of Southampton. The town attorney obviously isn't here, the town attorney being
No.
Michael Sorty.
Yeah, and
Kathleen Murray is
and I think
is
the
here
appropriate
in his
thing to
place.
do
But perhaps
have the
at some point,
discussion
we should
with him.
discuss the timeline here as to what happened when, so that there's a better understanding on the part of the board as to why information wasn't communicated to the board so that we could make certain decisions associated with this on behalf of the taxpayers. And to say that it's a frivolous lawsuit, frankly, you know, right now, we may believe that to be the case, but that does not speak to how or why the town attorney himself did not follow the process.
At the end of the day, the town attorney isn't responsible for what happens in this town, it's the town board. Why was the town board not apprised of this situation last fall?
Actually, why wasn't, when you asked the question directly on Friday, specifically with regard to this scenario, I personally, I don't believe that the answer was forthcoming. With all due respect, Madam Supervisor, I don't think the answer was forthcoming, or maybe you received misinformation. But to say that this was a nothing to be concerned about.
I did not
And-
say
and
that.
it
I said that,
absolutely
you know,
was-
that was not what I said. I
Was not
said
the
that I had
case.
made the inquiry of the town attorney's office, and I was assured that the proper paperwork had been filed, and that we were awaiting the court's decision.
Ask for sorry to interrupt. For clarification of the status at the moment, I don't know anything about federal practice. So an answer was interposed. We put an answer in.
Correct. If I may, and this is the paperwork that I've received from the federal court website. I haven't seen the file. On January 11th, the court issued an order, federal district court, allowing the town 10 days to respond in writing as to why default judgment should not be entered. On January 24th, which was within that time frame, the town filed an affirmation in opposition to the motion for default judgment, and included with that the town's answer, underlying answer to the initial complaint filed in the lawsuit. That is what's currently pending before Judge Bianco, and that's what we await a decision on.
So the court just in layman's terms, the court wanted to know why no answer had been interposed and why they shouldn't just go ahead and give the default judgment to the plaintiff.
Correct, in response to the plaintiff's motion for the default.
And within that time frame, the town did answer, and
Correct.
the court accepted that answer, so they're considering that answer.
Let me follow up on my colleague's
That's
question.
good.
When was an answer supposed to be interposed?
On or about September 30th.
September 30th. And we get to January 25th, and we're offering up an answer to a $70 million lawsuit. And let me ask this procedurally. Unless the motion is granted, will the answer that was offered be accepted?
No,
So then we lose.
yes.
Thank you.
Wait, say that again, I'm sorry.
There's a motion requesting leave, not right, leave to interpose an answer.
Right,
That's attached to the motion,
right.
expressing why it is we dropped the ball over here. Unless the motion is granted for leave to interpose an answer, the answer that was offered on January 25th, some 4 months late, is not going to be interposed, and by definition, we lose.
Right,
We lose.
right,
We lose.
right.